Hi everyone, this video today is going to be a PowerPoint presentation that will explain the structure and language features of the expository essay. I hope you enjoy it. Now, as with every genre that you write, you need to be really mindful of the purpose of that genre, and you need to try and make sure that your language always addresses the purpose that's being asked of you. So with an expository essay, this is probably the first time you have written one in English for a long time, and it's quite different from an analytical essay, which is what you normally do. An expository essay provides an explanation of something through the use of factual or objective data. So it's really important that your essay is merely explaining and outlining using factual or objective data from the text to support your opinion. You're not trying to analyse or describe or be opinionated, you're merely explaining. So here is just another breakdown of the task that you've been asked to do. This is just pulled out from the task sheet. Now you need to make sure that you're addressing all of these things throughout your essay, and you can structure it so that each paragraph responds to a different requirement of the task. So you basically just need to ensure that you inform the audience about the details regarding the life and achievements of your particular person. You're going to examine the effect they have had on the social and cultural face of society. You are going to examine the socio-historical and socio-cultural context of that person's fame and notoriety. We'll talk about that in a little while. And you're going to examine how the autobiography constructs the person. So what language has been used in order to create a representation of your specific person. The optional extras are for you to decide whether or not you'll use them. So you can also use other sources in which to present your readings of your chosen person and compare how other texts have constructed them. So it's up to you if you do that extra paragraph or not. Alright, so now that you know what your task actually is and the purpose that you're trying to achieve, it's really important that you continually refer back to the task requirements. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So it's really important that you keep referring back to the task requirements and not get lost on some tangent. So keep on coming back to this PowerPoint when you're writing it, just to help you. This slide here, I'm not going to read through it, but this is just a slide that clearly outlines what you need to include in your introduction. You really can't go wrong if you follow this. Just make sure that you are using third person, you're being very formal in your language, and make sure that you touch on all of these issues. And then in your body paragraphs, you discuss each of the dot points in the order that you mentioned them in the introduction. So don't give too much background info away in the introduction. You're merely just telling us what the rest of the essay is going to be about. Throughout the body of your essay, it's really important that you follow a strict paragraph structure. This slide here is just a general slide to explain what needs to be included in each body paragraph in terms of the structure of your paragraphs. So you just need to make sure that you are addressing a different aspect of the task in each paragraph, that you're using quotes in every paragraph except the intro. So you need quotes from your text or from secondary texts about your person. In every single paragraph, you need to have supporting evidence to support your explanations. Make sure that you structure your body in the order that you listed each point in the introduction, and follow a really strict paragraph structure of a topic sentence. I'm going to be looking for topic sentences, explaining your ideas, giving evidence, analysing and discussing that evidence, and then try, if you can, particularly if you're aiming for an A, to have a concluding or a linking sentence at the end of each paragraph that smoothly links from the point you've just made into the point you're about to make. And that's a real skill that you should practice using. In your first body paragraph, you're explaining and giving an outline of who the person is that you will be discussing and what they're famous for. So these are just some questions that you can aim to answer. Obviously, you don't have to follow this. You can do it in whichever way you feel addresses the task. This is just an outline if you want it. So some of the things you need to think about is, who is this person, when were they famous, and what were they famous for? Did society receive them in a positive way, or did they have a negative impact on society? And has it changed over time? Have we as a society changed our opinion on this person? And if so, what for? Now, in this paragraph, what you're going to be discussing is how the person has been received in society as a result of their socio-cultural or socio-historical context. Now, I know that that sounds wordy, but please don't get stressed out because it's actually not that difficult. You just have to have a bit of a think about it, okay? So it's going to be one or the other. It's either going to be their cultural context or their historical context. So this slide shows you the difference between the two. Which is sociocultural is the beliefs, practices, attitudes, ideologies and values of the society at the time, and then socio-historical refers to any specific events, political issues, if there was a war or a conflict at a particular historical time that may have influenced a person's fame. Now, the word context just means the time and the place that they are in. So you have to think about two specific questions here. First of all, identify what their socio-cultural or socio-historical context actually is. What are the cultural beliefs and practices at that time? If your person is a musician, what are the socio-cultural beliefs around musicians? If they're a sporting person, what do we believe as a society about sports people? And then what you're going to do is think about how these things have actually influenced your person directly, and how those things have influenced the way your person is received. So if we as a society really value sporting ability and we look up to sports people as role models, if your person didn't live up to that standard, has their socio-cultural context influenced their fame? And that's the kind of thing you need to think about here. Don't give up, just have a real good think about it and you'll be surprised at what you come up with. I think you'll find that this body paragraph will be your longest one because there's actually quite a lot to include, and it's the paragraph where you analyse how the text has actually constructed your person. You may find that it needs to go over 2 paragraphs in order for it to be clearly structured. So this slide, I'm not going to read it, but you're basically just going to look at these questions. Some questions will be relevant and others won't. Don't feel like you have to answer every single aspect of this. Rather, you just need to have a look at the way your text has been written and how that text therefore represents your person. So have a look at these questions, respond to them, think about which ones are relevant and which ones aren't, and of course you really need to use lots of examples from the text in order to support your opinions. So you're going to look at how the person has chosen to represent themselves, the language that they have used in order to represent themselves, the information that they've included, and how that might affect the way we see them. And perhaps if we see their perspective on an event, it might change the way we see them, and that's what you would discuss here. So this is all about the language, the structure, and the content of your actual text that you've studied. Here we have a section of the essay where you're going to compare the way your text has represented your person to the way that they are generally represented in other texts. So you might talk about the way magazines represent your person. You might talk about the way they have been discussed in the media in terms of news stories. You might look at their social media life and how that might be different from the way they're represented. So if you're thinking about a character who has represented themselves really positively in their own autobiography, and then when you look at the way they're represented in the media, it's actually a really different representation, and this is where you would discuss those differences. Your person might not be famous enough to have had them being, that didn't make sense, but your person might not be famous enough to have been talked about in the media, which is where you wouldn't really be able to do this section. But if your person is really famous, and they've had lots of media coverage about them, this would be a really interesting point to make about your text and how it's different or the same to how they've represented themselves. Finally, in your conclusion, you just need to summarise what you've talked about. Do not introduce any new ideas. Restate and summarise the points you've made, and you can end, it's always hard to end a conclusion, but you could just end perhaps by mentioning how that autobiography could affect readers' perception of the person. So if it could open your eyes to this person's life, if it could present them in a more positive way than they've normally been received, just maybe make mention of how that autobiography, after reading it, could change the perceptions of that person. These are the language features that I'm going to be looking for when I'm marking your essay. So you need to make sure that you are using third person, you are varying up the sentence lengths that you're using. Also vary up the starts of your sentences, so don't have every paragraph starting with the same word. Don't use abbreviations or slang, so don't shorten words except if it's in a quote. Don't ask rhetorical questions. Don't use personal opinion or emotion. This is an expository essay, it's not an opinionative one. And your vocab needs to be really extensive and really formal. Okay, that's really important. There's one other thing I wanted to mention here. Oh yeah, whenever you're talking about the author of the text, you use their full name the first time you talk about them, and from then on you can refer to them by their surname, never their first name. Good luck.